You ready?
Yeah, it might be more like espresso. Look.
Yeah, I see. Everybody put your mic on. Good evening and welcome everybody. Welcome to all of our members of the EDA. Thank you all for joining us tonight as we talk about Radford's economic situation, how things are looking, some of the investments you all have, some of the ideas that you have, and what we're doing. We're happy to have Kim Repass, our Director of Economic Development, here with us today as well. Abram, will you introduce everybody that's on the EDA, or let everybody introduce themselves so that we make sure everybody's identified? Steve Harvey with Tech Lab. I know most of you.
Keith Wellens, Ameriprise.
Justin Mosby.
Abram Williams, First Street Property. Bruce Tate, Radford University.
Thank you all. And let's start by talking a little bit about some of the things that we've been planning. You know, one of the focuses of council for the last few years has been the revitalization of Main Street. We've invested in West End pretty significantly, and we're looking at the East End investment. Abram, I know you were here. Have you all had a chance to talk a little bit about the report we received a few weeks ago?
So we were going to meet last Thursday, and we had to cancel that meeting. So that was going to be our topic, was actually discuss that in preparation for this meeting. So unfortunately, we weren't able to do that. But I think most of the board members, we saw something of that report, I believe, from 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
So we at least...
Well, let me sum up. Essentially, the concept is obviously to help that section of downtown Radford be very similar to what we've done on West Main, particularly right here in the Central Business District, to try to make the best of our outdoor spaces, to work with property owners, to enhance buildings, facades, interiors where possible, to rethink the way that we utilize the Main Street area. It may not be so linear when we're all through. We're looking at the possibility of, can we do some things differently? One of the big pieces with that was that the Virginia Department of Transportation doesn't designate that as the only alternate route for Interstate 81. Those trucks can take Rock Road, which is extremely helpful because it gives us some more flexibility. It can give us flexibility on parking. It can give us flexibility on bumping out the sidewalks in some places so that we can have some level of beautification, but also outdoor dining, outdoor seating, and to break up downtown a little bit so it's not just a little straight shot right through there. And one of the things we've talked about that we want to be real cognizant of is how people use downtown. And the study had so many thousand people that participated. One of their main pieces was make it greener, make it more pedestrian friendly, make it a place where people want to spend more time. And so that's really one of our big initiatives, you know, looking at this moving forward, that hopefully by doing those things, it'll be very similar to what's occurred in the Central Business District right here on West Main, where the properties adjacent to the street become more desirable for people to create new businesses or to expand what they've got there or to renovate or whatever that happens to be. So that's kind of where we are, I think, in general. The idea is to work with all of our boards and commissions over the next couple of months so that early spring we might be able to begin on some of the activity and get some things moving forward. Kim, have I left anything out?
No, I don't think so. And I think as this study continues to move forward, I was kind of briefing them, you know, as we went through how exciting it was with some of the renderings that we were getting for the final survey. So like Abram said, I think we were going to discuss that in more detail last Thursday. Unfortunately, we had to cancel that meeting, so we weren't able to really discuss kind of what we would like to see here in terms of incentives as we move forward with building renderings and upfitting, that type of thing. That would be more than the POP program, but allow some facade improvements and kind of help those businesses out.
Well, and we can actually talk about that, just brainstorm a little bit as we discuss. I know you all put a little more money aside, I believe, this year for some of the things with POP, or we're thinking about doing that. We could create sort of a POP plus category for more extensive renovations. I think some of it is actually meeting with some of the property owners to say, what don't we have that you need to be able to get us further along? We do know that 4 buildings downtown have planned improvements already over the next 18 months. The buildings all in the western portion of East Main Street right there near 3rd Avenue are looking at improvements and enhancements which should benefit everybody. The other piece will be looking at Tyler Avenue to some degree as you come down and around the corner to Main Street, and then going from Main Street up 3rd Avenue, hopefully continuing to work with that, and then moving into the parking lot there, because that's going to be even more crucial, not only as a parking lot for the shopping and dining and all that takes place, but for some of the apartments that are going to be upstairs in those buildings, particularly on that western portion there, and making sure that's safe and that people feel comfortable parking in that space and then walking across the street, and just some of the logistics that are there. Let's talk about POP for a minute. And I know that we've had some pretty good success. Some of it has been smaller as we started smaller a couple of years ago. First of all, thank you to the EDA for embracing POP and for supporting it financially and for working with council to try to figure that out. I've heard from several business owners that have loved being able to get new signs or to be able to enhance their facade a little bit. And I know you all had some thoughts about, expanding that so it could actually be a bigger splash, a little bit more to that.
Right, so we had some discussions early on about how we could increase the POP program. It was fantastic, but to give some of those larger projects that we were seeing businesses were wanting to have and kind of help out a little bit more. So we discussed how we could extend that POP program and provide more money back. So right now it caps out for those projects that cap out at $15,000. They actually get $5,000 back. So there is a graduated scale going up to $15,000, but it's been incredibly successful. We've had quite a few already that maxed out at the $5,000. They really embraced this new scale, and it's really helped them move forward with some of these projects that they've been wanting to do for a while, but just needed additional assistance. So it's been very successful.
What do you all think? Is this something that having an even more robust POP Plus, because the front of a building can cost a whole lot more than 15 grand to fix up, is that something that makes more sense for us to do to incentivize that, or what are your thoughts? Abram, you do this a lot. What do you think?
So when we first started talking about POP, that was, we increased it, we wanted to get, because it remains still the same criteria. It has to be visual. It can't be a room, it can't be something inside out behind the building. We wanted it to be visual to the commercial district. So we increased it to 15 to kind of push the bigger project. But what we're talking about in the East Main, that's a much bigger project.
Right.
That would be in the hundreds of thousands. So, what would you guys like to see in that? Because Bruce and I were kind of talking, and of the initial 33,000 that we started POP with, we've gone over that 7,000, which we knew we were going to do that. But it's been, it's been a good program, a lot of interest. We've had 3 of the bigger projects. So right now we have 200,000 in cash. So to do a bigger project, I think if you would like to see something that had big incentives,
We got to figure out a way to pay for it.
yeah, I don't know if, I think the 200,000 right now, it'd be hard for us to increase POP because it could be, 10 at once if East Main really gets, which that's what we want, but I don't know if we can facilitate a bunch of different, 5 to 10 big projects at one time. I think that would probably best.
Have we had anybody come to us so far that had a bigger project that was hoping for $25,000 or $30,000 in an incentive that we just couldn't do?
I think we've had some that didn't qualify, a couple of roofs that we went $50,000 to $80,000, we kind of, well, that doesn't qualify. So, it's been, anything else comes to mind? I know a couple people asked about roofs. Nobody's asked yet about what potentially could happen on East Main. Most of the time, they probably already know what they're getting into if the project has already been done. But I would say that now that this East Main, the visuals are rolling out, people are getting excited. I'm sure that some of them will ask, hey, I've got some
be helpful if it was extended beyond just facade. I'm not saying a full roof at $100,000, but
We had talked about, Justin, we had a conversation about possibly inside, but we couldn't figure out how to keep that fair across the board.
Right.
We
Yeah.
wanted to give one business an advantage over the other. So we stuck to the facade for increasing pop, because that was part of the topic. We were talking about restaurants and outdoor seating, and then possible, well, what about the retail business that maybe wanted to do something because COVID brought something up they never thought of. And the only way we could figure out to make it fair was just keep the parameters of pop, which outdoor seating would fall into that. So I mean, we couldn't really come to a good agreement how to keep it fair to all the businesses.
Right.
All that each side.
And I know one of the biggest challenges too is not just the look of the building, but for someone to be able to occupy a space, that some extensive renovation is needed inside in many of our buildings. And that's one of the challenges, that if that is a big hang up to getting occupancy, you know, that's a huge piece. And some of that comes from leaky roofs. Some of it comes from older windows. You know, fortunately, we've had pretty good upgrades to many of our buildings, but there's still pockets throughout Main Street where there's some challenges there. You know, I'm fine with waiting a little bit longer as we think about it, but I think having those conversations with some of the businesses, some of the building owners, of what our need is specifically right there, because I don't know what's eligible. I don't know if ARP money could cover some of that we could provide as grants. But again, you brought up a really important point. How do we keep it fair? And how do we set it up in a way so that it's not just an improvement and then sits there and doesn't get rented or doesn't get, you know, changed, that it actually makes a difference?
One thing that some of these projects definitely at the East Main, people are going to do a massive overhaul, and also if there's something going on inside, they're going to qualify for the enterprise zone, correct?
Right.
So that, you know, we make them aware of that, hey, you got the local incentives and also the enterprise zone, because that could pay, you know, if somebody spent $300,000 in qualified investments, you know, they're going to get back close to probably 50 to 60. So I mean, if they're aware of the bigger incentives, then I think.
Well, I guess that's one of the pieces. Maybe we need to put together sort of an incentive package, you know, that's a little more upfront. But one question I had about that, this is really our second go-around in the last 30 years or so of doing this. 20 years ago, we did some of this. I think there's some businesses that are in need now that actually went through that before. Don't we have some that already have some of those so they wouldn't be eligible again?
That's correct.
Yeah.
And I think there were just a couple comments thinking while you were talking. Done a little research on this, kind of preparing for tonight, and I think you all are on the right track. Because one thing about the incentive programs and funding attached to it, whether you go through, certainly outdoor dining is going to qualify for the American Recovery Plan Act funding. And then the other thing with facades, pretty sure that we're going to be able to advance an ARC funding.
And, you know, one of the nice things with some of the facades, if it creates either a fabric or a physical awning that can provide more outdoor space for, say, sidewalk sale type activity, particularly if we widen sidewalks in some places with some bump outs and things like that, that may help us with some of our retail establishments. You know, the challenge with a lot of these buildings is that they make sense as a full unit, that the upstairs is rented as apartments or as the place where the people that own the business live, and then downstairs is the retail or restaurant or service or whatever that happens to be. And sometimes when those are broken out, that doesn't make as much economic sense to make one work for the other. So that's part of our challenge. But the good news is with the buildings that are under renovation, I think one of their primary areas, they want to have a good Main Street area, but they're going to create apartment living on the second floor, so that should provide an income that would then, you know, pay off any additional work that's being done there. What did you have?
I was just wondering, I know that council is assisting someone else in the community, and one thing that was important to council, that if we made that investment, that if they sold it within a certain amount of years, that there would be a portion of that prorated that they would pay back. So let's say we pay a third on a big renovation, well, that's equity, and then they turn around and sell it. And so where do we stand on that? If we're making this larger investment, it's just something for you guys to think about as well. We have done that with one other project, Just that, you know, we want you to be successful, we want you to be profitable, but we're not setting you up to turn around and sell either. We're looking at a longer investment than just that term. So we've done that recently, so depending on the amount that we're looking at, it may be something we want to think about.
Yeah. Let's shift just a little bit, and we'll come back to this, I think, as a long-term goal. We are very, very fortunate that Kim and the team and everybody, Onward NRV, was able to recruit Oronzi to come join us at our Commerce Park. Sadly, though, that is our last available space that we have to be able to market outside of working at public-private partnerships right now. And this is something I was hoping EDA could help us think through. You know, where do we want to be in terms of preparing for that next 10, 20, 30 years for economic development with bigger properties? We've got retail, we've got office space, we've got some things like that, but do we have a space that if someone said, I really want to make widgets in Radford and I want to hire 100 people, where do we put them? You know, that's the hard part. And one of the things I wondered is, would it make sense for us to sort of create a development tier that we could build toward? Obviously, the nicest thing is if you already have a shell building that's pretty substantial, that's got all the utilities and everything that's there, but that's a huge investment, and that's also a risk because it may or may not be set up the way that the company would like it to be. A step below that from my perspective, and certainly this is where I'd like some input too, would be a slab that would be prepared for a shell building, but that would have all utilities, everything kind of to it, so that really it was just vertical construction that would need to take place. And then the third basic option would be to at least to grade whatever property we would identify that would prepare it for a slab. Again, make sure it had water, power, internet, you know, all the utilities that would be needed in sufficient quantities to the site. And we would at least be setting the stage for that so that, you know, they wouldn't have to start from zero to go from there. But thoughts?
I mean, we definitely discussed that because it's no secret we're kind of out of the industrial space that
Right.
the city owns. Should we ask you to close session?
Yeah, let's do that. I think it would make sense. I'd like to make a motion that the work session, the joint EDA City Council meeting move to closed session for the discussion of real property or for a public purpose or the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body under Virginia Code Section 2.2-3711A3. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Because I don't even know if we established they had a quorum or called their meeting.
Well, I don't think they have to have an official meeting if we're doing this as a council meeting with a work session with guests.
I think it's too governing-ish body.
Yeah.
When we do it with planning commission, we have to have two.
Let's go ahead and do it just in case.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll hold on this motion. Why don't you officially open your meeting and establish a quorum, and then we'll go into close.
All right, so call the EDA meeting to order at 6:04. We do have a quorum. And we need, I don't have my paper. Do I need to go into closed session?
I don't think so. I think if I do it.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So we have a motion and a second to go into closed session. Do we have any discussion? All in favor, please respond by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So stop our stream, please.